All right, welcome to Health Second Opinion, and this is the gut brain connection. And we are going to be talking about through the philosophy, the art, and the science of things natural. We want, the mission of this and all shows and the function of the office is to improve the quality and the quantity of life for individuals through chiropractic and Max Living's five essentials and deliver to you a system that allows proper philosophical thought and implementation. Very much the key. It's all great if you have a lot of thought, information, but if you don't implement it, it's pretty much worthless. So we're going to be talking about these things with that gut brain connection and how the body really functions. We've got the September 12th workshop. Let's see here. Let's put that up there. It's going to be the 12th, 6:30. That's this coming Monday here at the office. And just text the office if you want us to save you a seat. How many people? Because we're going to dive into, and you'll get to ask your personal questions about the meat of the information and how you can implement it. And so, I'm going to talk about some of the things that, number one, is the most important thing of all, is that you have a desire to reach optimum living. If it's about just existing, well, this isn't the show for you. Because health is not the lack of disease or infirmity. It is about optimum function. And with the relationship to gut health, the connections are amazing. I learned so much just studying and for this. So your digestive system, wow, where does it start? One of the things, so many people think, well, our digestive systems really, starts in our stomach, and then it's our intestines, and then it goes into the colon. And so, no, it really does begin in the mouth. And so, one of the shockers that was, not new information to me, but to a lot of people, was that the mouth, in the chewing aspect of breaking down your food, is so important because that is where the majority of the enzyme amylase, which is what breaks down carbohydrates. It's not lipase or peptase, which are pancreatic enzymes, which are in there, and then also connections with bile salts and the breakdown of the enzymes, the emulsification of fat to be able to absorb that. So that is right there from the moment food hits your mouth. One of the other things that's just not as much talked about as much is that the digestive system, once we start chewing food, our brain through the vagus nerve starts to communicate with the rest of our digestive system. And so it just communicates with the pancreas. It tells the body literally how sweet things are. It thinks how much carbohydrates it thinks are coming, how much fat, how much protein, all of these things, so that the body enzymatically is starting to prepare for that. See if I can find some less glaring light as I move around. There we go. So one of the biggest things is then that digestion really starts, and that's why it's important in the old tales. It's true. You got to chew your food, because that's where you're going to break down those carbohydrates, and you're going to send that on into the stomach. And then the stomach's going to continue to break down that food further. And then once it's released into the intestinal tract, that common biliary duct and the common bile duct and all these things start to secrete the enzymes, lipase and peptase, and then also start to mix in with that amylase to literally, that came from your mouth, to break down the food. You also get at that point, the reduction of the acid content and becoming more basic solutions, so that we can move it through all the way through the small intestine, large intestine, colon, and then elimination. And so we really forget about the fact that if we are going to improve the gut health so that we can, and again, another bombshell question, if you don't know how much of the serotonin in the body is produced in the guts versus the brain, come to the workshop. And we'll talk about then how to improve the health so that you can have a better brain. How much of the dopamine? It's amazing. It will blow your mind. And Dr. Google can give you the information, but it takes a lot to then ferret out the amount of information to repair it. So digestion it's about absorption. It's about the breakdown of food so that you can get the building blocks of life, literally the proteins, the fats, or the amino acids, the fats, and how many essential carbohydrates are there? How many essential amino acids? How many essential fats? And so then the last part of the digestive system is, of course, elimination. Getting rid of the cellular waste that we inherently produce during cellular respiration and just plain living. And then just like exhaling carbon dioxide, right? So we have that same type of waste, then not just the stuff that we can't absorb is then mixed in. And the nutrients, the type of nutrients, really the source, affect literally how the building blocks of life are. So do you want to be made out of cardboard, frankenfood? Or do you want to learn about the fats and what plants they come from to have healthier fats? The different foods that are natural, I guess, be the antibiotics. So they have chemicals in them that as they pass through our digestive system, they inhibit the bad bacteria and they help the good bacteria. And then what are the best sources of fiber, and how is this gut brain, the neuro gut connection and the neuroimmune connection, realizing that an enormous amount of our immune system also takes part in there. And again, how that relates to optimizing our health, to literally moving. One of the things I think we fail to talk about as much as we should in healthcare is that we are limiting the number of negatives so the body can focus on cellular repair and regeneration versus fighting inflammation and just the repair aspect of it. So this is a big deal. And that's why so many people show up in our Max Living offices and they feel failed. They are absolutely devastated. Their health is destroyed. But yet many of them literally resurrect their health through the practices of becoming in alignment with the principles that govern health. I wouldn't jump off a building and expect to fly, just like I shouldn't expect to eat donuts and Twinkies and be able to run a 4-2-40. It's just probably not going to happen. And might be able to deal that way for a little while. But once we get into our 30s and 40s and our habits become more manifest. And so one of the other things we're going to be talking about is your poop. Yeah, it's a stinky topic, but yeah, I'm a dad. I can give that joke. So the frequency, the consistency, the color, do you know what they should be? Bristol stool charts for color. We're going to be talking about frequency. How often should you go? And do you know? Gastrointestinal warning signs. So bloating, abdominal pain, constipation, nausea, diarrhea, infrequent bowel movements. You got any of those? What about your kids? Dysbiosis, the growth, the overgrowth of bad bacteria, is caused by the absence of the good bacteria. There is a niche, an available opportunity for an opportunistic pathogen to gain ground. If it's functioning at 100%, you come in contact with them, they pass through. What are some of the common things that people unknowingly have done and why they ended up in such a mess, even since childhood? Oh, I hear so many times, like, I've had this since I was a kid. What are you talking about? I was just born with it. was probably from those dozen rounds of antibiotics that you took that killed off all the microbiota. And yeah, I mean, it killed the ear infection, I hope. You didn't have to resort to the tubes in the ears, but you know, it also killed all the other healthy bacteria too. And then, if you weren't breastfed, man, really suffering. And then if you're 2 years old or something, and you started to eat solid food and everything, if you weren't eating Greek yogurts and you weren't eating the fermented foods that are fibrous enough to reinoculate the colon, and what are the best ones and at what time to eat them, and you weren't aware, this was not your mode. I mean, it wasn't your paradigm, it wasn't mine growing up. Not because my parents didn't care, it was because they didn't know. There's an old tale, I love stories, about how a young lady was learning to cook, and her husband asked her why she always cut the ends off the ham. And she said, I do it because, my mother did it. And so he just said, okay, whatever. I'm not going to argue. But he liked those. And he, okay, whatever. I'm just going to not argue. So when they went to her parents for a meal, and he got to ask, hey, why do you cut the ends off the ham when you cook it? She said, I don't know. It's just what my mother taught me to do. And then story goes on. Then they go to the grandmother, great grandmother. And finally, the great grandmother says, oh, well, that's because my pan was always too small. So I had to cut some off. And oftentimes our habits are just that way. They don't have any inherent positive reason. It's just dogma. It's habit. It's what you were taught. And if what you were taught creates dysbiosis and small bowel disease, and you have leaky gut syndrome, and that creates the chronic inflammation in your body and leads to other autoinflammatory conditions that you think are your skin or you think are your joints, then you're never going to get to the source of the problem. But there are lots of people who reverse those conditions. And those are the people we want to help, those that are seeking knowledge for implementation. And so we're going to talk about how to reset the gut and literally the quality of foods, the top 5 foods that are the best for the gut, and then how to remove, repair, and re-inoculate, and what are the best supplements, and just all this information. September 12th, 6:30, text that number so that you can save a seat, and we will make sure that you get the information. All right, and get to answer your questions. That is, so many of us don't get to spend enough time with our doctors in finding out and listening to information from other people with the same issues. And this is that at time. This is where we set apart to sit down with our patients and take the time to give them the information, answer the personal questions. And then if that's not enough, you can stick around afterwards and we'll make sure and do it then. If we don't know, then figure it out and get back with you. All right. Love and respect. I hope that you are blessed with a great weekend. See you here next time on Health Second Opinion.